All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday, but actually it's a good Thursday because it's Friday in disguise, for you anyway. So I've mentioned this before, but keep in mind there is no class for you tomorrow because it's a professional development day. So I will be in class tomorrow. You will get to stay home and sleep, which is highly unfair. Greatly disagree with this arrangement. However, that's the way it is. But keep in mind, if you have a university classes are still on. Okay, so this only affects high school. University classes, it's just a regular day. Okay. So let's jump into where we were yesterday. So we had talked about the Buddha, right? The enlightened one, this guy who was sort of a high caste prince, very rich, very kind of successful, had a cute wife that he just married and all this stuff. And then he kind of realizes that people are eternally suffering and how to escape from that, right? And so he goes on a bit of a pilgrimage. He's wandering around, doing all sorts of meditation and, trying to, eat as little as possible to sort of get his mind closer to some sort of realization. He sits beneath the Bodhi tree and he has a kind of an epiphany, right? Something comes to him. He discovers something, and this is basically what he discovers, right? People are attached to impermanent states or impermanent things, and it's your desire for those things that makes you suffer, that makes you miserable. And so if you can give up your attachment, you can escape suffering, right? And you can achieve enlightenment. And so we kind of talked about that. We experimented with a little bit of meditation. And then we moved on and we talked about these questions. So I ask you, who is this Chandragupta Maurya guy? Yeah, he's kind of not so much. He didn't say that again. Does he invent the story of India?
Nothing. No, I forgot it. But
Okay.
yesterday I said that. I think something about the story. And who is the first person?
Well, he's definitely the first person to kind of rule a united India, right? So, again, there's a group of kings that kind of enter into an alliance. Chandragupta takes control of them, and he and his son Bindusara and Ashoka, his grandson, kind of expand their control to basically all of India. So this is kind of historically speaking, Aryan, this is the first time that India is united, right, under one ruler. And again, India is kind of under one government today, but this is the first time it happens in history, right, in around the 300s. So, yeah, so here he is in statue form anyway. And again, he's quite famous, right? People are actually writing history at this time, and so we know about Chandragupta from a number of different texts, right? The Jains, who are another religion in India, the Buddhists, the Hindus, and even the Greeks, right? Because we mentioned that Seleucus, one of Alexander the Great's generals, kind of bumps into Chandragupta. They have a bit of a conflict, a little bit of a war, and then they come to a peace treaty and an agreement, and they shake hands, and they have peaceful relations, right? So Chandragupta is even mentioned in Greek sources as well. So he's pretty famous, and we'll hear a little bit more about him a little bit later today. Oh shoot, I answered question 2. I always do that. Yeah, they concluded a peace treaty, right? Seleucus and Chandragupta. They had a little bit of a battle, and then they hugged it out, right? Ashoka, why did he renounce violence?
Because he saw too much war and he saw it's too cruel for humanity. And he's also like a follower of Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided to use Dharma as his means of
Yeah, so he's kind of a light Buddhist, if you will, right? He's not super strong into it, it seems, but in the context of a war, he has this realization that, you know, war is tragedy, right? War is awful, whether you're the winner or the loser. There's death and destruction and heartache, and so why do this, right? And so, yeah, he starts to rule his empire according to Dharma. And what's Dharma?
It's like a nature.
It's like a natural rule. Okay, good. What else is it kind of? Dharma is the natural rule, the natural order. It's what? There's something else that's kind of mixed in too. It starts with a V. V. No.
Successful?
No. So it's kind of so Dharma is kind of a natural law, natural order, but it's also got a little bit of virtue mixed into it, right? So there's a kind of a properness or a goodness to this natural order, right? So, you know, the law of the jungle, that's a natural order too, but that's not a very friendly one, right? So this Dharma means like the natural way of things, but also, you know, the correct way, the virtuous way, right? The right way. So, yeah, he starts to rule his empire like that. And so we have Chandragupta, we have Ashoka, the grandson. But after Ashoka, it seems like that empire started to fall apart. And why was that? Why did the Mauryan Empire kind of start to crumble? Yeah.
Because they don't like obey from the rulers.
They don't.
Not
Yeah.
follow the rulers.
Right.
And because of that, the last, I can say the last empire is their kingdom is less than 50 years because of that.
Yeah, it seems like the kings who come after Ashoka are kind of not very strong, right? They're not very good. They're not good administrators, right? They're not confident. They don't make the right decisions. People don't respect them, or they're not concerned with governing. They're concerned with spending money and spending time with their harems and things like that, right? And so as a result, the empire kind of falls apart. And as I mentioned, empires in this stage of history are really tough to keep together, right? Communication is very difficult, right? Most people don't read and write. There's no electronic communications, of course. And so, you know, keeping everyone obeying you and doing the same thing over the entire continent of India or subcontinent of India is really difficult, right? And if you don't have your head in the game, it's not going to happen, right? And so these kings that come after Ashoka, they don't really have their head in the game. They're not really focused on ruling. And unfortunately, ruling is a very difficult thing to do in this period. And so the empire kind of crumbles, right? Kingdoms that used to be part of it, they kind of shrug their shoulders and say, okay, well, we're just going to do whatever we want to do. We're not going to worry about the emperor or the king that succeeds Ashoka. So the whole thing kind of falls apart. And again, that's often what happens with empires in this period. You have one great... Oh, earthquake drill. Everybody try to get into your desk. Let's go. Get under. Come on. Under your desk.
Right now,
Keep your head
drop,
protected.
cover, and hold
Come
on.
on, let's go.
Drop to the ground.
You gotta go
Take
under.
cover under a sturdy piece of furniture. Hold on until the shaking stops.
This is
Remember
not
to
the
turn
best
away from glass windows. If you can't get under something like a piece of furniture, stay low and protect your head and neck using your
Yeah,
arms.
so keep your head under
Strong
the desk if
earthquakes
possible.
may trigger a
Because then
tsunami.
if something falls, it won't hit your
If
head.
you are near the ocean during an
Yeah, I
earthquake,
know, it's tough to get
drop,
under there. Come on,
cover,
you can do
and
it.
hold on. and when the shaking stops,
You're gonna die.
quickly move to higher ground.
This thing's gonna fall and it's gonna kill you.
So yes, after an earthquake, say the biggest earthquake is in the world. It's about 40 seconds.
40 seconds.
It's about 2 minutes.
But this one is
Yeah, this table is
barely good. We were good.
The shaking has now stopped. Consider the following questions. Are you prepared? Do you have an emergency kit stocked with enough food, water and supplies for everyone in your home? Have you secured your belongings so they will not fall and injure you during a strong earthquake? Do you have a plan to reunite with family if the phone connections are interrupted? For more information on emergency preparedness and earthquakes, visit the website shakeoutbc.ca or speak with someone in student services. Thank you for taking part in the Columbia College earthquake drill.
Thank you, Rose. So, that, I forgot to explain it to you. That's an earthquake drill. Everybody eyes up here for a second, please. Thank you. So, that's an earthquake drill. And again, you know, this is an earthquake.
May I have your attention, please?
Oh,
The building emergency has ended and all clear has been given. Please resume normal activities.
man. That guy sounds a
May I
lot
have
like
your
me.
attention, please? The building emergency has ended and all clear has been given. Please resume normal activities.
Weird.
May I have your attention, please?
Yeah.
The building emergency has ended and all clear has been given. Please resume normal activities.
Okay. Now that I was sort of I was sort of rudely interrupted by myself. But what I was saying, of course, is that yeah, we do live in an earthquake zone here. They don't happen very often. Has anyone actually experienced an earthquake here?
No, in Vancouver?
Yeah. Not here. Other places.
Yes.
I think I've felt two of them here, just little ones, right? Just little, not a lot. But this is an earthquake zone. They do happen all the time, although you don't feel them most of the time. But if one ever does occur, we do need to know how to protect ourselves, right? And so, again, if this building starts shaking, stuff is going to fall over. And if it really starts shaking, there's a danger that some of this stuff will fall out of the roof, right? And it shouldn't do that, right? It's secured up there. But all of this stuff is kind of hanging, right? Because these ceiling tiles are just kind of hung from a higher roof. And so there's all kinds of vents, there's lights, there's, alarms and things like that. There's speakers there. And these things can, if everything is shaking, they can fall out, right? And so if you look at that vent over Tafadzwa there, if that thing falls out and falls on his head, that's really going to hurt, right? That's going to be dangerous. So you've got to try and get under something secure. And this room is not good, as you just found out, because there's really no room under the desks. But in another room, you want to get under the desk, make sure all of you is under it, right? So that anything that falls won't fall on you, right? And hold on to the desk itself, because if the floor is bouncing around, the desk can kind of wander away, right? So you want to hang on to it and just kind of wait it out, okay? Until everything kind of settles. Again, the odds of this happening are low, right? But again, if it happens, we need to be under the desk. At the very least, we need our head and our torso under there so that we can protect ourselves, right? Because again, everything is secured up here in the roof, but there's no guarantee that once the building starts really shaking that everything is going to stay up there. And you don't want this stuff falling on your head, I guarantee you. Okay? So, I kind of messed that up because I forgot that we were doing that today and I didn't warn you about it. But second, this is not a great room because there's kind of nowhere to get under the desks, right? There's not a lot of room. They're made by what?
Yeah, they're made by glass.
Yeah, and they've got glass on top of them too, right? So this isn't really the best room to be in. So hopefully if there's an earthquake, we won't be in here, right? But if you're somewhere else, get under something, okay? Get something sturdy over your head so that if anything falls out of the roof, it's not going to hit you on the head and kill you, okay? Because I would be very sad for an hour or so. I'm kidding. You guys, do you not get my sense of humor? No. That's even worse. This sort of like pity laugh, like, oh, ah, ah. Oh. That was the worst. You have to make that up to me, Felicia. That hurt. Okay. So, earthquake drill aside, again, the building starts shaking. For the love of God, get under something secure, okay? But, moving on. So yeah, here's our friend Chandragupta Maurya. We said that he came from, we're not really sure where he comes from. There's varying stories. They've probably passed into myth at this point. But again, he might have come from a Vaishya family. He might have come from a Kshatriya family. We know he's kind of spent some time in northwest India. And he does kind of overthrow some of these kings in the north and sort of gains an empire. And then continues to expand into India with his son Bindusara and his grandson Ashoka, right? And here's Ashoka here, the grandson of Chandragupta Maurya, and he's kind of interesting because he renounces violence. And again, the ancient world is ruled with violence, right? There's no fines for things usually unless you're rich. There's no jail time, there's no jail, there's no police, right? So people are kind of kept in line through threats of violence. And here, Ashoka does something unprecedented in civilization. He says he's going to rule through nonviolence, right? He's going to rule through persuasion. He's going to rule according to the Dharma, right? Which is an unbelievable thing to do and to be successful with. And so, as we read about yesterday, he forbade the slaughtering of animals, right? He ensured medical treatment for animals and people. We said he replaced his kind of hunting tours with Dharma tours. and he tried to ensure the sort of welfare and happiness of all his people. And he did that by presenting himself as a father, right? A father of the nation. Again, we talked about the decline of the Mauryan Empire here. Weak kings are not good for empires because they're hard to hold together. And that brings us to this, the last part of, well, there's more, but the last part of the story of India that we'll watch here. And so this section, again, our narrator will take us through some of the things that we've read about with Chandragupta and Ashoka, but he'll also talk about some new things as well, right? So he'll talk a little bit about how historians came to know of Ashoka, because he was for a while he was kind of forgotten, interestingly enough. For a while he was forgotten, but historians kind of came to learn about him again. We'll hear a little more about his idea of nonviolence, some of the ideas that he came to while meditating himself. He'll talk about why it was so important to be kind to animals, and then the key idea behind the edicts of Ashoka. Okay, and an edict. Does anyone know what an edict is? An edict is like a pronouncement, right? A thing that the king has said, right? An edict is a statement from the king, right? So it carries a lot of weight, carries a lot of power when the king says, "This is how things shall be," right? Then people have to listen to it. Okay, so for online people, questions, and the link is in Microsoft Teams as usual. And so we'll watch this section, we'll probably take a break, and then we'll talk about these questions. Questions are in Teams as well. Let's watch. So online, well, Vito, we'll see you in just a little bit, okay? All right. So we're back. I have a few questions for you. And then maybe I'll let you go. So first question for you, of course, is how do historians learn about the existence of Ashoka? Right? He was, strangely enough, historically speaking, he was forgotten for quite some time. And then what happened? I cannot hear you, my dear.
I don't know the guy who forgot. And there is something to do with the like the what? The most beautiful city?
The most what?
Beautiful city in the world.
Yeah, well, that was Chandragupta's capital, right? So he got off the boat, and he kind of explored Chandragupta's capital city, which the historians from the time, people who had written at the time, thought it was fantastic, right? But it was James Princeps, right, who discovered something else.
What about the building with his name on it?
Yeah, they found that big kind of stone, right? And it was written in a script that no one could read. And then James Princeps thought, I wonder if this is. Did you catch it? Did you catch what he thought it was? Maybe. Okay, well he saw these inscriptions on the stone, and he thought maybe this is an older version of Sanskrit, right? An earlier written form of Sanskrit, right? So he started to compare, he started to piece things together, and sure enough, he started to make discoveries, right? And he started to figure out this different script for a language that people already knew, right? And so again, we knew how to read Sanskrit in another script, but this is an earlier, older script, right? But James Princeps said, I think I can connect the two, right? I think I can decipher it because we know how Sanskrit goes, we know how to read it, we just need to read it in this new alphabet, right? This new script. So he made kind of a couple of lucky guesses, right? And when he started to make comparisons and try to piece it together, it turned out that his guess was right? That this was an earlier form of the written Sanskrit, and he was able to figure it out. And of course, he came across, these edicts, right? These pronouncements by this King Ashoka, right? So we've kind of answered this question already, but I think the video showed us a little more clearly. Where was Ashoka when he kind of had this realization about war? You've really got to speak up more. I'm sorry, Felicia, but I can just barely hear you.
Is it when they had a war?
Yeah, it was during that war. Do you remember where it was? Right. So, no. So he attacked the kingdom of Kalinga. Right. He was in Kalinga. We saw the archaeologists who were doing excavations there, and they found all sorts of arrow points and spear points and things, and that was kind of where it happened, right? And according to the legend, Ashoka defeated the people of Kalinga, but of course, in the process realized that this war is a tragedy for everyone, right? Everyone suffers. And so, yeah, he adopts this sort of perspective of nonviolence, which again, for the ancient world is revolutionary, right? The ancient world is ruled through violence. Everywhere you go, Greece, Rome, Egypt, Mesopotamia, violence is happening everywhere, right? And Ashoka comes to this idea that no, in fact, we're not going to do that, right? We're going to rule in a different way, right? So pretty interestingly, we see him return to this, or not return, but we see him go to the same place that the Buddha went to, right? He went to the same tree and sat under it, kind of trying to become enlightened himself, right? Kind of thinking, I guess, if he sits in the same place as the Buddha, he will come to some sort of epiphany as well, right? And again, he does in some ways, right? He kind of gains ideas about Dharma, right, and how to govern his empire. Why we saw Michael Wood visit an animal hospital, and the woman who was working there, why did she say it was important to be kind to animals?
So like it's also impact to our karma. If we do bad things to animals, maybe on the next life we will be like the animals itself.
Right. So mistreating animals is not good for your karma, right? It can negatively influence, what happens to you in your next life. And again, if you aren't nice to a certain animal, maybe you might come back as that animal, which would be ironic and tragically ironic, I guess. But what else? What else does she say? Yeah. Why is it important to be kind to animals?
It's also because like in Buddhism, like there is something called like we should love every beings in this world, and it's including animals.
And it includes animals? Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. True. But what does she take 5 there, Felicia? What is take a break? You're doing good though. What does she say?
To be kind to animals.
Yeah, why? Say that one more time. Yes. If you do bad things to an animal, it's a circle. Kind of.
If we hurt them, the karma will answer you.
Yeah. So it's true, right? And she also says that, it's important to be kind to animals because it shows what kind of person you are, right? Because animals, for the most part, are powerless, right? You can do what you want to them. And so because of that, you can show who you really are. And if you treat animals cruelly, she says, the idea is that you'll treat people cruelly as well, right? And so it's important to be kind to animals because that kind of conditions the person who you are, right? And again, if you treat animals badly, you'll treat humans badly. If you are kind to animals, then you'll also be kind to people, right? It's sort of, it continues on from there, right? If you can, because you can often you can do what you want to animals, right? But of course, Ashoka has put rules in place that, ensure that animals are treated well, right? Okay, and last question, what's the key idea here behind the Edicts of Ashoka? Say again?
The key idea.
Yeah. Is it what?
Something to do with love.
Well, yeah, but what does the narrator tell us in this section?
Can we say protecting from
Can we say what?
protecting from people?
Protecting from people? What? You'll have to give me a little bit more than that.
I think I would say that they should they should to protect the people
Uh-huh.
From the bad things that come to them.
Uh,
I'm not like, if I'm not mistaken, I said that.
Yeah. That idea is probably a part of some of the things that Ashoka was saying and was arguing for. Yeah, definitely. Okay, maybe we'll leave it there for today because I'm not getting a lot of participation here, and I'm not sure if you guys understand or don't understand, but you're kind of just sitting there not saying anything, and so it's hard for me to know. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll just end it here for today. You can go home, and we'll see you Monday, and we'll kind of recap some of these ideas, and then there's a little more to do with Buddhism and Hinduism, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we might move on, or yeah, I'm gonna look at where we are and see where we go from here. There's a little more to India, but I'm gonna check the scheduling and just see where we are so that we don't run out of time. But until then, I'll just leave it there so you can pack it up. No school tomorrow, and I'll see you Monday. Okay? So
Can I
that's
say
it.
something?
Yes, you can.